Well, good afternoon, investors. This is Mark Robertson coming to you from back in Michigan after spending the weekend with hundreds. We got up to nearly 400 attendees in Chicago this past weekend. Rabid, very interested, eager, hungry investors, and it was a wonderful time. I'm joined here by three other individuals that were there. We'll show you some more in a second here. Ken Kavula. Ken, how did you enjoy the weekend?
I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I enjoyed meeting people that I had never ever met face to face, only online. I spent a lot of my time in the beginners classes. Ann Cuniaz and myself were supposed to teach about 40 beginners how to begin the journey of learning about the SSG. And we ended up with over 60, almost 70, 68 beginners in our class. And besides being a little bit crowded into a smaller room, we had a great time dealing with them, especially at the two wrap-up sessions where we got them all onto their computers and got them all working on the core SSG. It was a very, very worthwhile exercise for them and to help us refresh the kind of things that we needed to do to make the class meet the time limits. We were a little challenged for time a couple times, but we made it happen. Great time there. I really enjoyed myself.
Fantastic. And then we're also joined here by, and I put him next on the list because this was his home neighborhood. We were within literally a few blocks of his old paper route. So Kevin Gillogly, welcome. And you're still
Glad
there,
to be
right?
here. Yes, I am. I'm though I'm not in the land of Portillo's, because as you get up here into Lake County, you're pretty close to Wisconsin. So we're in the land of Culvers.
Oh, yeah.
Here.
Oh,
So just to let you know.
Culvers, I understand, Kevin. We got Culvers all over the place. I understand Culvers.
That's a cheesehead business. They're from Wisconsin.
Absolutely, we know that. Yep.
And you know the Midwestern rule that when you drive by the fourth one, you have to stop and get something. So
I know, and that's because the cardiologist really encourages kind of behavior.
So, and last but not least, and certainly not least, Matt gave a wonderful presentation that he shared with us a little while back on bull sessions on the psychology of investing. The attendees were unanimous that Matt is tall, and he and Ken indoctrinated the nation on Luminar and LAZR, ticker LAZR. We're gonna have one slide in here. We restricted Matt to 10 slides in Chicago, but good
that was a
afternoon, Matt.
mistake. That was a mistake.
Good
I gotta
afternoon.
deal with the clock next time, Matt. Okay, not slides, the clock.
Don't worry.
Right?
Hey, let me go on. You would have given me an hour. I would have had an hour's worth of stuff to tell about it.
I know, Matt. I know. Okay.
It's not only my professional history. It's actually what I went to college for back in the day. I'm an electrical engineer with an optics concentration. So,
I thought
the
you
fascination
could have
meter is
got
high.
it wasn't a degree in learning how to fill a time slot. Okay.
I'll say even, although in most audiences it might be indisputable that I'm tall, my standard report is I am 6'8". That is average in the MBA.
Yep.
Just average.
Mark, I'm getting a little bit of questioning about where the heck did you get this Luminar screenshot from?
That's from somebody. It's from a YouTube presentation on the company.
So somebody trying to pump the stock price up?
Probably.
Probably.
Well, there certainly wasn't a good prediction for today.
No, we're down 6 to 8% today, so 6 to 8% today. So.
Oh, my heart just went pit-a-pat. I thought you said 68. Okay.
No, I did not say 68. All right, so we're gonna talk a little bit about LAZR. We have one slide, so Matt, that ought to keep you to about 10 or 15 minutes, max,
Yeah.
I guess. All right,
Yeah, we're just gonna see the crash video. I don't even need to talk about it. We'll watch the competition plow over children and say enough.
There you go. Yeah, that was definitely a hit with the audience, no doubt about it. No, nothing but good feedback.
The most compelling piece of evidence that you could have ever done with anybody. It's a great piece of video, and if we can show it in in the bull session. We need to show it, Mark.
We will do that. We'll put it on the to-do list. All right, we're going to also talk about Irish investing. But first, let's get started with our weekly reminder that Portillo's is not a sponsor of this session, although they should be. And there is visual evidence of Ken's baptism. And I do like the way he's holding that hot dog.
That's a lot of stuff to put on a hot dog. That's all I got to say. Okay.
And the price, I mean,
It's called running it through the garden. That's what we say in Chicago.
that's right.
It's not the easiest hot dog I've ever had to try to eat either. So.
Oh, he kept grumbling about mustard only and something about Cleveland and
I'm a Cleveland guy, bred and born, and a good old hot dog that snaps when you bite into it with plain old Brown Stadium mustard. That's the norm of a hot dog for me. That's the hot dog I want to eat for the rest of my life. So
we've already booked an excursion. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, when you cross the date line and you get into the central time zone, this is how you eat a hot dog. Okay.
Well,
Good
I'm
stuff.
ensconced in the Eastern time zone. So.
All right, and here's a quick look at, I wish we could have had everybody that we are associated with and have made contributions to our content here and for the community, but this was the group of riffraff, as Kevin put it, that gathered for a picture after the session. You can read the names yourself. Wish we could have grabbed some of those other people, but again, it was an opportunity to spend time with a number of groundhoggers also. We'll talk about that in a minute, but there they are, and good presentations by all, and those smiles are not were not forced.
Look at the top of my head just fitting under Matt's chin. Look at that.
Well, there's another picture in the series of you looking up at him too.
Oh, all right.
I didn't put that one in here. And we will reserve some special mention for the lady sitting to the left of Kevin in the picture. She actually was sitting in for Herb Lemkool, one of our treasured guest knights and Mid-Michigan volunteer. That's his daughter. And she's going to earn her own spot, Ken. After the time I spent with her, she is the real deal.
She's funny, isn't she, Mark? She's smart and funny.
Yeah,
she's a new member of my investment club, and I'm very pleased to have her. She's going to add a certain thing investment club in a couple of years, so I'm very pleased to have her in the club.
I was going to ask, is she one of the cool kids, or is that the grandchildren?
The grandchildren and some of the children are in the cool kids, but Cheryl has not been because she doesn't live in the Traverse City area. She lives in the Janesville, Wisconsin area. So it makes it difficult for her to get together, and that cool kids group tends to meet face to face.
Yeah. All right. So thanks to.
I like this photo. I'm stuck between a butcher and a hooker.
Okay, next slide.
Absolutely. All right. Very quickly, we will move on to no investment recommendation is intended. Everything you know or witness here is literally to illustrate, demonstrate, and basically share the methods of the modern investment club movement. Please make your own decision, do your own homework about anything that we talk about. We are going to talk about a lot of companies here. So please be careful out there. If we own something, we'll try to remember to say that. We also think that you are smart enough to figure out what works best for you. But please do that. If you have any questions or would like copies of these slides, we do post them in the manifest forum, but you can also write to either email address and request them. We did a roundtable. We'll talk about that briefly here in the slide series, but we will have a follow-up. We call it the Echo Chamber for the May roundtable. That'll be on the, help me out, Ken, is it on the 28th, week from today?
May 28th. You're absolutely right, Mark.
We're a week out from that, and the presenters do have the opportunity or the option of switching out their stocks. And I've told many people that there's no truth to the rumor that all of us are switching to Luminar. All right, we'll just spend a moment on this one. Basically, we are back at where the stock market as measured by the companies in the value line standard edition are basically matching that line of reasonable expectations. What that means in a nutshell is that the average return forecast from a stock study, average, that means there's some higher, there's some lower, but the average really does check in at 9 or 10% for the average stock study.
And again, let's remind people that we're using the value line arithmetic average. You can get slightly different reads on where the market is performing if you use different indexes. So if you're looking at the Wilshire 5000 or the S&P 500 or whatever the index is you might choose, that you'll get slightly different reads, but we're reasonably certain that they'll all range somewhere around 9.5 to 10.5%, no matter which one you choose.
Yep. So trudging along, just a quick reminder, this is an example of some of the stuff that we covered during the weekend. We've encouraged everybody to dig in deeper and understand this better. We think it comes back full circle. It's the projected return on enterprise value, although Pat Donnelly has renamed it Patrick's return on enterprise value as he advised us. So Pat Donnelly, the Irish are taking over the world, apparently, the world of investing, so he's coming for us. And we just encourage people to understand it better. This is our modified Joel Greenblatt magic formula, if you want to think of it that way. And we think it can be very useful. Just encourage everybody to dig in deeper. I will probably do an encore presentation of that session based on some of the emails that I have received. And I added one thing
Formula
there.
at the top, folks. Formula at the top, and most interesting statement, probably last one on the page.
Yep, takes the PEs out. And I did add portfolio analysis detaxification in honor of what it does for not being so messed up with the earnings. All right. Here's just a quick reminder. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. You can now find the projected return on value on any company report page. At some point in time, we'll probably plot it. So you can find that there, and you can make the comparison between the par and the projected return on value for any company. Again, the par and the proof should resemble each other, and when they don't, you have to dig in a little bit deeper. Were you gonna say something, Ken?
Nope. I was just gonna. I that 9.1 and 7.3 are close enough to be called the same number. So we don't mean they should be identical. We mean they should resemble each other.
I did hear that in your beginner session you had to talk some people down that wanted to go out to 5 significant digits or something. Did I hear
We
that
had a
rumor
couple
correctly?
of engineers that got shaky. Yeah, they were. We had some mechanical engineers, especially, that were really shaky about not taking it out to 4 decimal places. But we won the battle finally, I think.
Okay. All right. Here's your other reminder that you can actually screen using the Manifest Investing stock screen for Prove. This is a quick look for companies with a quality ranking greater than 90, a projected return on value greater than 12, and a growth forecast greater than 12. And when you embed the projected return on value in your hunt, your results will display that projected return on value. Again, those two numbers should line up pretty well, and they are side by side in the results display.
I think sometimes, Mark, when we make screens like this, we forget to mention that data services have a little bit of lag when a company has a real issue with a set of earnings numbers or a particular problem that suddenly crops up. So that means sometimes in these kinds of lists, a very distressed company will suddenly appear on the list, and it's appearing on the list only because its stock price has fallen so much, not because it's necessarily something that you want to race out and buy. So still do your due diligence, even though this is a really high quality list with pretty decent growth expectations. And remember that the data sources that are used to put these numbers together are not instantaneously changed when a company gets into a little bit of trouble. There's a couple companies on this list that I would ask myself to steer away from, and I'm not going to point them out, but I would just ask you to never buy something from a list like this until you do all the due diligence that you know you should be doing when you're sitting down to study a stock.
Screening is just the start, and I will second what Ken said. And sometimes it's amazing to watch what the analysts do when they're thrown into chaos. And we have
Yeah.
talked about that a little bit here in the past. The one company on here that we will be talking about in a few minutes, Lulu, does pass muster as you dig in deeper for sure. Up at
Absolutely.
the very top.
Yeah.
So just be aware that that's there. All right, moving on to the Groundhog Challenge. I thought this was kind of cool because Matt Spielman and I met Marilyn Westmus as we were sitting in the hallway, and she stopped and we chatted for a very pleasant 15 or 20 minutes with Marilyn. So congratulations, Marilyn, on assuming the lead. She says she plans to enjoy it, no matter how brief it may be. And just going down the list, I mean, we saw a number of these people at the conference, and a good time was had by all, and just good to see. Now the fact that my name isn't on here yet kind of troubles me, but I'll have to go to work.
And watch out for that broad assets at number 5 and those Bower City ladies at number 20. They're on this top 40 list again, and they're moving very quietly up to the top again. So watch them very carefully. Those are two clubs that have managed to do extremely well over the years of the Groundhog Challenge, and here they are again.
Yeah,
I'm going to give a shout out to the DC chapter and Ty Hughes's Moose Pond investors. Look at that big jump, 71 to 37. I wanted to give him number 1, but then look at how much Jim Gallagher jumped from 164.
Yeah, and Jim Gallagher, we're going to talk about that. Jim Gallagher.
Look at him in just a second. Yeah. Kevin, do you know what boosted the Moose Pond so much in 1 week? Or maybe in 3 weeks this time, because we didn't have a couple of sessions. Yeah. Do you know what boosted
Ty's
it so
in the
much?
audience. We can release the microphone to Ty. He could.
Okay, Ty, could you tell us what boosted that? I've unmuted you. Well, I can't. You're muted.
Yeah.
There you go. You're
there we go.
Ty, go
We had
ahead.
a couple. Clearfield went up a little bit. Gentex went up. We only have seven stocks, so they.
Wait. Did I hear Clearfield went up?
No, I'm sorry. Taiwan, I think, went up a little bit too. So my top ones are Taiwan, Clearfield, and Addis. All have done pretty well.
He continues to have faith in Clearfield.
Well, it's a position that I have vacated. So okay.
They're slowly coming back. I think. I'm really optimistic. A Minnesota company. It just seems like they're doing good things, and that money coming out on the broadband initiative. It was just the government was very slow to get the money rolled out. So
I think the story is wonderful for the company, but I just lost faith in the optimism for it. I don't know.
Oh, you need size class on patience and discipline, Ken.
Well, I'm a pretty patient guy, Mark, but I think my patience after 2 years kind of waned. All right.
All right. So
Mark, I don't know if he has time to be able to sit in on size class. He's teaching every segment of every hour.
He doesn't. He has to do it on his own.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So I did think thought we'd spend a little bit of time looking at Jim Gallagher. Again, Jim is a member of the group champions a couple times in the last 3 years, the Space Coast Club out of Florida. And you may remember Jim was the one who was featured in the group photo with just his feet in the sand on the Gulf of Mexico. And that's all we got of Jim, but he does enter it as an individual also. And his number 1 holding is Mama Mancini's. So Ken, do you want to do your commercial for Mama?
Well, I gave a commercial before we started in the green room, and if you can pick up Mama Mancini's meatballs anywhere, they happen to be available at our local Costco. If you can pick them up, I strongly recommend them. This came up as an idea after Natalie and I ate Mama Mancini's meatballs, I don't know, 6-7 months ago. So much that I wanted to know who was actually distributing them. Turned out it was Mama Mancini that was distributing it. I went to the manifest website, and Mama wasn't listed as one of the stocks in our database, but Better Investing was covering it because Better Investing gets a data feed from Morningstar, and Morningstar covers almost any company that's publicly traded. So I said, Mark, can you do an analysis on Mama Mancini and throw it into our database as well? And so he did. It was a finalist for inclusion in our top small company list. It didn't make that list, but I've thought for a while now that it's a really interesting company with a great product, and it's on my radar and has been on my radar. I haven't been asking you to have them sponsor the bull sessions, but maybe we should put it up there and ask them and Portillo's both to sponsor the bull sessions going forward.
Absolutely. And here's a look. I just asked the question here at Stock Charts, inputting Jim Gallagher's selections back on Groundhog Day. And you can see, I know this is a little bit tough to see, but the 5 holdings are Mama Mancini's, which is Mama is the ticker. Figs, which I do not know a lot about. Tesla, Big Lots is the weakest performer here. And then what is that, Aquamarine line that's going from -20 to +54 in a couple of days. That's AST Space Mobile. And this is underscoring a theme that we're going to be covering here today, the Launchpad and Irish investing and the intersection between the two. And Gallagher certainly qualifies as an Irishman, and Kevin also gets dragged into that classification. Here is what is Launchpad about it. And it's definitely not a core holding. It resembles LAZR in some ways here. And you can see for yourself, we're talking about a company going from, this is AST Space Mobile, pre-earnings. In other words, they have not generated positive earnings yet. But look at the revenues for 24, 25, 26. That at least the revenue's launching. The jury will be out on the earnings, but that's what makes this Irish investing stock. I'm sure that Jim Gallagher would serve us well as a member of the Irish investing panels at
Well, Mark, Jim
Chicago.
is with us today, but he doesn't seem to have a microphone. So
Okay.
maybe he's calling in. Sometimes I don't get an icon on my control panel if you're on a phone call. Jim, if you can talk to us and explain anything you might want to say about AST Space Mobile, give me a text and right here, or ask a question in the text box, the question box, and we'll try to make it so you can talk to us if in fact you have some way to speak to us live.
Okay.
Meanwhile, let's continue, Mark. Okay.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about, again, just quickly checking in on our performance perspectives. Our intent here is to share and reinforce the fact that those 6 or 7 companies up at the top are not chosen at random. They are the most widely followed companies by our subscribers. Cognizant has reassumed the lead, interestingly enough. And just a reminder that you can find those type of companies. They make a huge difference in long-term results. And our 10 cup demonstration and our investing roundtable continue to fare fairly well.
That was a question, Mark, that I was asked at convention. Do we ever re-look at the most widely followed? And I think you just answered it. You, in fact, do look at the most widely followed, and the list has stayed fairly consistent?
Oh, very much so. I mean, other than the fact that Apple would not even have been in the top 40 10 years ago or 12 years ago, and it's now the number 1 most widely followed stock. It has been for quite some time. Stryker was for quite a while. Visa's a new entry on the list in the last 5 years, probably.
Well, I think the questions, and it happened twice during convention, the questions weren't about any of the top 6 names, but the question was about, is Fastenal still the 7th most widely followed? And my answer was, as far as I know it is, but you're reinforcing that, so that's a good thing.
It still is, yes.
Yep.
It's clinging to that classification anyhow. And the mid caps and small caps have actually shown some signs of life, so a little bit of a turnaround. Here are the stock panel selections for the Bank 2024 audience. And you can see that Susie's doing pretty well out of the gate. And we see that often from Susie.
This is based on 2 days trading, Mark?
Yes.
Friday
Well,
and Monday, right?
I
Okay.
wouldn't get too hung up on the numbers, just focus in on the names.
Yeah.
And what I think is fascinating with, I mean, there's obviously a couple people closing their eyes and swinging for the fences with respect to that long-term growth rate and, very, very early stage companies. But in general, you're looking at decent quality companies with high growth rates, mostly in the teens. Those return forecasts are right where they ought to be in the 14 to 16 range. And there's some pretty interesting ideas for further study there.
Well, I thought for certain, Mark, there'd be 2 or 3 other red quality ratings, but I'm the only one with a red quality rating, so that's interesting, I guess.
Well, it was interesting because you and I both talked about we don't want to draw too much attention to this LAZR company, and then lo and behold, there it is in bold red, and seemed to me that there was quite a bit of conversation going on about it, thanks to you and Matt.
Well, and it's fair to relate to our audience here that we did ask all the people on the panel. There were 6 of them. You can see the names. We did ask all the people on the panel to pick 2 of their favorite better quality stocks, and then take a wild swing at a non-core stock for the lightning round. So we know that we were going to get some non-core stocks on the list. It's just that, like I said, I thought there might be another 1 or 2 red qualities to go with mine, but there wasn't.
Well,
Alex just graduated.
That's right.
Just made it into the black quality, huh? Okay.
But I'll say too, I won't take credit for it because I didn't talk about it publicly till Saturday afternoon, and every single table I sat in, as I eavesdropped on my table mates, and they didn't know anything about what I did about it. We're chatting away and talking about it, and had their phones up and were screening for it. There was a wave. Something happened. Something was in the water.
Yeah, and I mean we're talking about a stock trading at $1.73. It's now what's it at today, Matt? $1.56 or
62. It was 68. I have to say 62 at the moment. 62.5. $62.5.
We'll take a closer look at it. It did capture the attention of quite a few of the attendees. My Portillo's is just a placeholder for to basically honor Ken's baptism weekend.
Oh, sure.
Well,
But if you went up 400%, you'd take it, right, Mark?
Oh, absolutely.
When it comes to it, while neither my name nor my accent gives it away, I am a former Dubliner, so it fits the pattern.
All right. This one was kind of a fun slide. I put it in a slide where I challenged everybody to think about preconceived notions, that sort of thing, and quoted the book Factfulness, which we covered here at Bull Session probably a little over a year and a half ago. And the answer to this question is just as you would expect. That's not the right answer. Many people believe that the consumption of the turkey makes you sleepy. It used to be the Detroit Lions all by themselves in this area. Kevin, watch yourself. The Lions made us plenty sleepy on Thanksgiving, but they got better.
You get the Bears on Thanksgiving, so we'll have fun.
Is that this year?
Yes, it is.
Ooh, I can't wait. So here's the answer, and the answer to the question, it's kind of a myth. Turkey's among the lower foods in tryptophan content. But the reason I included this was, as Ken was just saying, our audiences have become, they're not afraid to participate. And in this case, I had talked about turkeys declining to fly, and I was advised by a number of attendees that turkeys can fly. They don't like to, they're not very good at it, but they do fly. And of course, the famous episode from WKRP, good stuff.
I had a long talk with Mark in the car on the way home from Chicago and explained that all I have to do is sit in the bay window of my dinette and watch my backyard, which fronts on a nice forest. And The turkeys regularly march through the backyard, especially in the spring when the females are being gathered by the males into a harem, and then again in the fall when they got a lot of little turkeys running after them. And the turkey hens especially love to take a very short flight into the lower branches of the tree. I told Mark I think it's just the turkey female playing hard to get in the spring, so that the other one has to furl his tail out and provide a show for her.
But as Cincinnati proved, apparently they don't do very well being dropped from helicopters. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Irish investing. This is something that kind of occurred to us as we were going through the weekend. We've talked about it several times here. We did again this weekend. Hugh McManus selecting Amazon back in 2014 when I believe its PE was about 470 and didn't get
if it even had a PE, yeah.
If it even had one. And both Hugh and Pat Donnelly are kind of renowned for displaying a company that will either have very few blue points or no blue points at all. And the blue line doesn't seem to be something that they require as they're getting out there and getting frisky. This was Pat's first selection for the panel. And as you can see, it's got a fairly limited operating history.
Especially in the public arena.
Yeah, so I've kind of taken to thinking that this might be an Irish thing. Now, Kevin, you seem to be more well behaved than your contemporaries.
Yes, but now that you put me on the spot, I'm going to have to throw one of those into my next presentation.
Okay.
Just to be able to prove that I'm Irish.
Remember, folks, that the lack of an I bar isn't an omission. It means it wasn't being traded during that year, okay?
Not a lot going on there. Well, here is one of those Irish crimes. And again, this was a slide that we used. In that very location 10 years ago at the National Convention, Hugh, that's actually his screening results from 10 years ago. He selected Amazon. Not sure why. Well, they're there. They're at 5th on the list. And it was a packed room. You probably remember it fairly well, Ken.
Absolutely.
Standing room only, not a single vote for it. I voted for it because I felt bad for Hugh. No, the revenues were going up. The cash from operations were going up. He went through a fairly detailed explanation of why you didn't need to look at earnings yet, straight out of the mouth of Jeff Bezos. And it's one of the top performing selections in the history of the roundtable since that date. He did double down on it at Halloween 2014 also for the roundtable. So it's a 2-time selection. $2,000 is now worth approximately $25,000 for the roundtable.
And we don't want to make the impression that we had some really bad choices to go with Amazon, but Amazon just beat hands down any of the other choices that were made at that particular roundtable.
Yeah, your Gentex did just fine, Ken. I mean,
yeah, it did, but it can't compare to what this one did.
And again, this is some of that early stage investing class. Probably do a little bit more on this. Here is that PE I was just describing down the middle of the chart. Definitely up in the triple digits, which makes most of us run for the hills. But again, this is our encouragement to anybody who's involved in this kind of stuff, especially if you want to get a little bit frisky and look at some of these earlier stage companies. This projected return on value will enable a fairly reasonable analysis in that area because you are avoiding the problems associated with that PE ratio. And here's
Mark, is this throwing, excuse me, before you go to this slide, go back one slide. Is the middle of that showing 3 more purchases in the roundtable, or is it showing some other purchase somewhere else?
I think we were just looking at 3 dates in history that.
Okay, just 3 different dates. Okay, all right.
Kind of different stages in their life cycle, if I remember. Okay, and then this is just that reminder that this concept, this projected return on value, does enable you to go a little bit deeper, a little bit earlier into the life cycle of the company. You don't have to get carried away. We occasionally.
I don't think even the Irish dare to delve into a price to hope ratio.
Not very often. Any thoughts on this, Ken? Have you been converted?
I've been converted for a number of years, Mark.
Okay.
Because I think that the prove number has real good, solid, practical value, and especially now that it's being displayed right on the stock page with all the other data, and I don't even have to calculate it anymore. So I just think it has a good practical value of validating my PAR analysis, and whenever I can validate that analysis, I'm very happy.
Yeah, and the point to be made is that if the farther back you can drive conscientiously towards that break-even point. In fact, I'm pretty sure, Kevin, are you still making an effort to identify, the stock to studies and all that versus this type of a framework?
Repeat yourself. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying correctly.
I'm just saying you want to have some idea where the company is in its life cycle for the companies that you're sharing at your sessions. Just
we do get a few non-core ones. It's really kind of interesting that over the first 2+ years of now almost a 4-year set of webinars, is the ones that have performed the best have been undervalued and then core, and all the ones that we pick ourselves, again using BI methodology and using stuff on the BI site, have not performed as well. Now I haven't updated in a while, so some of those undervalued features, they have a limited life, shelf life. So
and do you have any mechanism for closing those down after they've achieved a certain level, go ahead.
What I just do is I have public dashboards up on Manifest that anyone can see, and we do it by each year, and then we also segment it by whether they were undervalued features or stock to study or our own picks, and the ones that seem to perform the best have been, like I said, I haven't looked at it in about 10 months or so. They've been the undervalued features that perform the best.
Okay, fair enough. And we do caution audiences, and I think we were quite explicit on this. When you dabble to the left-hand side of this chart, the chances of something going wrong go up exponentially. And we certainly have done that with a few companies. For every Amazon, there's at least one other, I'll just say weaker performer. I might be sugarcoating that a little bit.
We did. Someone insisted on doing Clearfield, so yes, we got hammered with that too.
Yeah,
I will say, Mark, that a chart very similar to this one even appears in the beginners set of classes. In our classes that we do for the rank amateur, the person just starting, because right from the beginning we're saying it's kind of important to figure out approximately where the company is along this very typical growth chart. And if you're at either extreme, you might be looking at something that is just impossible to study as far as an SSG is concerned.
And I will say that I received questions from the audience that basically talked about, is section 5 on this chart inevitable? And the answer is no. There are companies that are in a food business or whatever that are going to continue for as long as they continue to execute. There are other companies that reinvent themselves. Intel comes to mind. So it's not inevitable, but you do want to be able to recognize it and step out of the way of that oncoming train in the situations that merit that.
And just for purposes of the graphics, those are 5 roughly equivalent columns there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 labeled, but that's not to imply that all of those different phases are equal in time periods either. There's no time along the bottom of this thing right here. Sometimes that number 3 and number 4, sometimes each one of those sections is really, really long. And sometimes they repeat that hypergrowth maturity section a couple times in their history.
Second stage.
This is just a very simple graphic to try to get the idea across to beginners.
But again, just an appetizer. We have covered this during entire sessions in the past, and we probably will in the future. All right, here are the selections that were made by the participants in Chicago, and the audience selections were Renaissance Re and Monster Beverage. And this is where we did spend some time talking about Luminar also. And
full disclosure, folks, this is based on 1 day of trading. Okay.
Okay. 1 day of trading.
Yes.
I just threw a couple images on there. Matt, would you like to encapsulate your view of Luminar? And I think this gives you some talking points to expound upon.
Yeah, actually, I found a new data point on the way home unintentionally too.
You did.
Yeah, so Luminar was founded. Luminar is I got it. I think it's important to note I got it from this meeting back in summer 2020. We were doing the Life After Google by George Giller book study, and Luminar is a brief vignette in that book. And in fact, George was an early investor in Luminar. They make LiDAR systems, which is like LADAR, or like radar, but it uses light to scan and understand your environment. That technology has a lot of manifestations, everything from the iPhone and the iPhone 12 to improve pictures, actually I just got a new crown. They use LiDAR to make a map of my mouth and make a perfectly fitting crown in 30 minutes or less. All the way up to border security or secure installation security. There are a number of companies that came public, particularly through SPAC mechanisms in late 2020 and 2021, who were in the orbit of the hype around autonomous driving. Luminar is one of those, but they have always been focused on safety first. The idea that you need to be able to detect something, even if it's dark or rainy or snowing, or there's other obstacles, in order to be able to then react to it. And you can see any number of I guess, humorous to horrific cases of Teslas, which use cameras only, so neither radar nor LiDAR, hitting everything from emergency vehicles to semis that are fully across the road, to other things, and understand that if you're more of a safety-minded company like Luminar's first customer, Volvo, very famous for safety, first auto OEM with seat belts, all the way back that far, that they find good partners to work with, and they have sort of a different niche than other LiDAR companies. There are also other technical boundaries, which are really important to me as an engineer, that made me place my bet on this company. Now the new, if we have time, it's one little paragraph. The new thing I found on the way home, I was reading The Armchair Economist by Stephen Landsberg, which first, it's not necessarily light reading like fiction, but it's short vignettes, and I found it entertaining. It was first published in 1993, updated in 2012. And the very first chapter, I'm on page 4 of the book, the very first chapter is about automotive safety. And in kind of a Freakonomics style, he talks about the fact that increased automotive safety causes people to drive more risky. And so the paragraph he said was, when seatbelts, so this is the research of Sam Peltzman from the University of Chicago. When seatbelts were first introduced, along with padded dashboards and collapsible steering columns, there were more accidents and fewer driver deaths per accident, but the total number of driver deaths remained essentially unchanged. They canceled each other out. Pedestrian deaths, however, appear to have increased. Pedestrians, after all, are not equipped with padded dashboards. Subsequent studies have found comparable results for airbags and anti-lock brakes. So there's where Luminar is now, going through autonomy, but with a safety focus. And then very recently, earlier this month, the National Highway Transport Safety Administration, NHTSA, has published a requirement for all cars to have automatic emergency braking systems. Many do now, but that can prove themselves to be reliable under set conditions to provide pedestrian safety. So I thought it was really interesting, because a lot of people thought that maybe NHTSA would, in its introduction, which it does with a lot of things, would just say, in order to get a 5-star crash rating, you need to do this. They went all the way to make it a requirement in its first iteration, so to speak. And I kind of wonder if they're looking at the data behind this, saying they've improved automotive safety quite a bit, but not necessarily pedestrian safety. So there's a little bonus bit.
Cool. So the company is actually moving along a little bit more rapidly than was thought. As recently as a year ago, I would draw the audience's attention to the estimate of 100 million in sales. You can see this has been a fairly steady picture going back. And then this is why I compared it to Jim Gallagher's ASTS. those are taking off, and the stuff that they're working on currently, I believe, does demonstrate that they might even be moving a little bit faster towards the realm of positive earnings. No one knows, but that could be happening. Is that a fair assessment, Matt, or not?
That's correct. There's still plenty of risk in this.
Mhm.
We talked about funding as well. They went the SPAC route because SPACs, particularly early SPACs, give you a guarantee, or let's say an expected amount of money, as opposed to a traditional IPO where it depends on what your share price is, what you get in the float. And they specifically went for a SPAC that funded them through 2025, which at the time in late 2020, they thought they would be really where 2026 is now. They've had a number of delays, including Volvo, their launch customer, for reasons not related to Luminar, but was delayed 9 months. So essentially a 1-year delay. So my estimate is 2026 or 2027, a 2-year delay to profitability from their initial plans. And that's what they need to fund. So when you think about what's going here, if you're, and you can't really use you could use a preferred procedure, just don't look for a line. Think about shares outstanding being significantly increased. It could be as low as 20%. This company was a $4 stock around when I picked it for Groundhog, which is why I'm not in the top 40 at all. But it came out because the Bank of America's analyst in particular thinks they need $1 billion to run that. The company has said somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 million for a company that's about 700 million cap right now. So they will have a funding round come out to get them into this. But yes, they also have more detailed a more detailed forecast or guidance due for second quarter now. It was first quarter, but then they announced a change in their manufacturing process, going more outsourced manufacturing. So they have it for Q2 now. But they've promised in the next 5 months, triple-digit growth compounded over 5 years.
Cool. All right.
Mark, there's an interesting conversation going on between Cheryl Smith and myself that I think might be interesting to everybody else. Okay. She's wanting to know if LAZR, LAZR might be a good fit with Gentex, GNTX. And we've been kind of talking back and forth here. I happen to think that Gentex would probably not want to try to acquire Luminar, because Luminar has a lot of associated business that Matt hasn't even begun to talk about with the general audiences yet, including chips business and insurance business and things like that. And I think we just need to make one point that I, at least, and Matt, I'm going to ask you the direct question. I don't view Luminar and Gentex as competitors in any way, shape, or form. Do you feel the same way?
I do. The only thing that would interest me from that idea is the fact that they're both in the same location. With Luminar's latest version, the Halo model, it used to be what they call the eyebrow. It sits just above the windshield. It couldn't be behind the windscreen, but it has a very minimum outside profile compared to a lot of other competitors. Halo can now be under the windscreen, but you want it to be as high as possible to get range. You know, looking to the horizon. So it probably sits right above a Gentex mirror in a lot of cars.
So
that could be cool. Yeah, so that could be interesting as a combined unit. But the other thing,
suggesting a way that they might cooperate on designing some food, not only the self-adjusting mirror, but the Luminar sensor as well. Then,
yeah, if an OEM got interested in easier installation from a single package, that might lead to things. But the other thing is that as an early stage company, you have to understand Austin Russell, the founder, has majority control of the company too. So it's not about whether an activist investor comes along to do it or Gentex makes a tender offer. They literally would have to convince Austin. And he has big dreams for his company.
And one last question, Matt. Last night at tennis, we were kicking this around. A lot of the people, obviously, at a Michigan tennis club know about cars. The question came back to me. Mobileye was kind of in the ahead of this horse race at one point. Can you describe, what track they've been on and how it would compare, what we need to think about as we think about Luminar and Mobileye?
Yeah, Mobileye, and of course Mobileye was bought by and then spun back off from Intel, and has a long history They were a partner of my former employer, Aptiv, as well. A long history with autonomy and particularly camera-based systems. But unlike that other company, they are not hung up on cameras only. They understand the automotive industry and using multi-modes. How do I want to say this? The standard, or let me say, the reference LiDAR unit for Mobileye, if you are looking to get a Mobileye system, is Luminar. That is also actually true for NVIDIA. NVIDIA actually goes so far as to market its own autonomous systems to analyze the data, obviously, is where they're coming from. You have sensors on there. Luminar is also the reference LiDAR for NVIDIA, and that's not just like a marketing partnership. That means their actual demonstration vehicles and the algorithms they use are used to and tuned to Luminar systems. Now, Mobileye has said they have interest in developing their own LiDAR. Again, they come from Intel, so they're not afraid of working at the chip level. I don't know, I'll say in the last year and a half, what sort of progress there is on that, or if as an independent company that's important to them now. But anything you hear that is a Mobileye win or an NVIDIA win, in a sense, is also a Luminar win.
Okay. Well, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, Matt, one more point. If you're looking for more data that shows the issue between improving one thing and at the same time increasing unexpected consequences like Freakonomics, your example was seat belts and everything. There's an awful lot of very interesting literature about traffic circles versus stop signs, which sings the same songs that people might be interested in taking a look at too.
Cool.
Yeah, and of course, as the U.S. gets more cities with traffic circles, more cities in Europe put in stoplights.
Put in stoplights or stop signs. One of the two.
There's an oscillation between the two.
Yeah.
It's interesting around here for sure. All right. Go ahead and move on. I just wanted to celebrate one thing. Kim had selected Renaissance Re as her stock, and I just wanted to point out that 4 years ago, you probably remember this well, Ken. This was a pretty good selection panel, and the results speak for themselves. And Kim did pick Chubb with some of the same type of thinking, only she was 4 years ahead of Warren Buffett.
I think what's so interesting about this chart, Mark, and of course we have some really good stocks at the top of that, but I think that you kind of should examine this chart and find out how well some old-fashioned good solid industrials did during this time period as well. And I'm going to draw your attention, not because it's my pick, but because it's a prime example of what I'm talking about. General Dynamics, which I see as really, that's my father's kind of industry, not the kind of stuff we look at normally. And yet look at the relative return for General Dynamics over the last 4 years. It's exceptional. I mean, when you get up into the 5, 6, 7s, you don't have to go up into the higher numbers to start to be exceptional.
Yeah, and the other thing that's extremely exceptional on this chart is EPAM made it to $700 before Ukraine.
Yep.
I mean, you look at that one at the bottom, it made it to 700 before that happened.
We can put a lot of blame on Mr. Putin for the negative 20% relative return. So.
All right, let's use our last 10 minutes or so together to talk Buttonwood Bulls. This is the portfolio we've been developing over the last several weeks, just adding a company or two at a time, and we're going to try to add a couple here today. The problem I had this morning was I have been bragging fairly robustly about my Vertra entry, VTSI, and I'm used to seeing it in the number 1 position here because it had gone up 40% since we picked it. And I figured maybe they had a stock split. They didn't have a stock split. And this is just that uncomfortable feeling. Ken often, he often infers or implies that, you talk too much about these success stories, they go away. Well, he strikes again. So.
One of my favorite musicals, Mark, is Wicked, and you're just feeling gravity right now. That's all that's happening.
It's just gravity,
gravity. Okay.
Here is what has happened to Vertra. We don't need to spend a lot of time here because it hurts too much. They've gone down quite a bit, and they only had a fairly modest hiccup. Again, this is the company that makes virtual training for military and law enforcement. And they do some good work. And you can see here was that 40% gain that I was, past tense, celebrating. And this is just a quick summary. What I found interesting is that they only missed by less than 10% here. And it caused what you saw on the previous page. They were supposed to do 8.8 or 8.9 for the first quarter, excuse me. They did 8.1. So I'm wondering if this doesn't qualify a little bit for Ken Janke penny stock treatment. He used to watch for companies that missed their earnings by a penny and went down 20% after hours, and he would buy them up. This one also falls into what you heard Ty Hughes referred to, that some of the stuff, some of the funding falls into that. And Ken, you've also cited that for sluggishness in the healthcare.
Well, we also made the point when we put Virtue in, Mark, that they depended an awful lot on local government, regional government, and federal government for their income, and that was problematic in a lot of cases with how big the budgets were going to be to provide some of this kind of training and equipment. So we made that point, to be fair to everybody, and we never saw this as a core stock. I think that's important to say as well.
I still think it's intact. I think that stuff's going to roll around as things shake out. And I never understood what you tried to explain to me about headwinds anyhow, so I'm just sticking my head in the sand and trying to ignore it. All right.
Speaking of headwinds and trade winds, I think you should have been in A2 milk, since it's up 62% since the first of the year and up 30% over the last year.
I know it. I know it.
You got it wrong.
You got it. Sometimes you just got to stick with the milk, even when it's sour. You can find other uses for it.
You were just early.
Go ahead, Matt.
You were just early on it.
Early. Well, that happens. That happens a lot.
Yeah, very
That's
early.
a charitable way of saying it. Go ahead.
Very early. Yeah. I want to give a gold star to Statista for this headline over here on the right on this slide, Mark. I think that's a wonderful headline. Whoever wrote that gets a couple of gold stars.
And that's because you and Kevin picked it for other purposes, right?
Yep.
Monster is selected for this week's or this month's roundtable. I suspect you're going to stick with that, so it'll be double down on.
I am. I think it got unduly punished the last time it reported some earnings, and there's too many good things going for it for us to disregard it as a spent stock. So yeah, I'm going to use Monster again next week.
And Kevin, you picked it for the roundtable, what, a couple months ago? 3 or 4 months ago?
I think I think in the fall.
In the
somewhere
fall.
in the fall.
Okay.
Well, Ray is suggesting out in the audience, Ray Woods, who was at a visitor at our investment club last night, is just repeating what our stock watcher from Monster said at last night's investment club. Monster is about to embark on an aggressive stock buyback purchase as well, which will contribute to earnings growth. We all understand that arithmetic. So there's a number of tailwinds right now for the company, and I don't think it's going to make the same mistake twice when we look at the next quarter coming out. I'm terrible as a reader of the future, however. So take what I said for as much as I charged you for it. Okay.
Okay, so what you're looking at here is one of our worksheets for a portfolio. You can basically make a clone of your portfolio and then experiment with it. And we were just tossing around some names, and that allows you to put them up side by side. We are toying with, and I think we're going to go ahead with it just for purposes of tracking, investing one of our $162 positions into Luminar for no other reason than just to keep it on, oh, dare I say it, our radar screens. Sorry.
LiDAR screens now.
LiDAR screens now. And then Ken, I put FactSet in there.
Yeah,
because
go on, Mark. Go on.
I was just going to say I used FactSet at the meeting, and everybody apparently has a FactSet story out there, so that's on there.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what do you want to do with these?
Well, Mark asked us for some ideas prior to the session today, and I'd like to make sure that we maintain that 75, 80% core in this portfolio. So my two suggestions were Lululemon, which I think has a great potential sales growth number and a great potential par number. And I really like ADP, which we finished in the beginners class doing a pretty in-depth analysis for it, considering it was just all beginners. And frankly, we think ADP has a little bit more potential than Manifest suggests. So really big company or a little bit smaller company, still a good sized, high quality company. And I'd like to suggest the second position be Lululemon, Mark.
Yeah, let's do that, and let's run ADP through a little bit of a gauntlet and audit process
Okay,
and bring
well,
it back.
according to the manifest numbers, it's a little bit low right now. So it doesn't appear with the manifest numbers to be a great stock to put into that portfolio right now. But Lulu certainly seems to have all the data right behind it and seems to be moving in the direction we want. That's going to really help our growth. It's going to really help our financial strength. It's going to definitely help our quality, and it's going to add a nice par near the top. And we've been having a couple of our companies experience some success, which means their par is dropping. You know, the stock does better, the future drops a little bit. So
Absolutely.
let's put Lulu in there and give it a chance to pop the portfolio towards the top. Giga's a very interesting. Is it Giga or Giga? Does anybody know?
I think it's probably Giga.
Giga? Okay, well, Giga's a
Giga
very interesting company, but I think we have enough let's play around stocks in the portfolio already. It might be one you want to personally play around with, but I don't think we have very much more room for another a leprechaun in the in the portfolio right now.
We need to limit our Irish investing. Yeah, this came up. This article, obviously that's a teaser headline on an article. It's a fairly recent article, but I found it interesting that our Vitra is right there with VTSI, but in the same article, they touched on GigaCloud. A number of you out in the audience have requested coverage, so we have done that, and it is an interesting business. I would say they're kind of Amazon-ish on the larger end. I have some.
Mark?
Yeah, go ahead.
Amazon for big things.
Amazon.
If you want to, in the audience is Ken Williams from both of my clubs, and he presented GigaCloud at MCMC last week, so he can be able to give you the best update. We put it on our watch list.
Okay. Does Ken have a microphone? We can go ahead and.
Yes, he does.
I mean, here's a look.
I'm going there right now. Give me a chance, Ken. Don't.
I think you can talk.
Got to get all my DC people recognized. That's all. I got to get them all recognized.
Hey,
okay, guys, be quiet. Ken, you're self-muted. So there we go. You can talk now. Ken, go on.
Hey, Ken.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I recently presented this stock to my club for MCMC, but I guess one of their competitive advantages is that for their online marketplace, they're in a number of different countries, and also a number of different ports that they can ship to. They certainly have a presence in the United States, but they're pretty big in Asia, and they're expanding. But their big competitive advantage is that they can ship a lot of their products within 1 week for less than the cost of Federal Express or UPS. So that seems to be one of the big competitive advantages. And I believe in my review of it, auto parts is kind of like another area they wanted to get into in terms of being able to sell that through their online marketplace.
And there's certainly demand for that based on what we've seen over the last few years. So again, early stage. Are you pretty comfortable that there's enough market for them to continue to grow at a elevated rate for the foreseeable?
Yeah, I think it's definitely there, but based on some of the things that I've been reviewing on Manifest, there, I am somewhat concerned about the short interest that for some reason has gone up. So that does have me concerned.
Okay, yeah, there's somebody out there trying to take advantage of volatility, apparently. But yeah, I mean, those are all trends in the right direction. Again, this is kind of Irish. It's not a lot of history. So we'll see going forward. So again, that has been added to coverage. Here's a company with a little more track record. I stole this from one of Ken's stock studies. So that's the company we will be adding to the Buttonwood portfolio. And we have to figure out some way, Ken, to watch for that moment of inflection when everybody decides that Lulu is not it anymore for going to the gym.
Oh, and I've owned clothing retailers before, and I realize that happens. And once that turnaround occurs, sometimes it's death for the company. And I'm going to use Chico's as a great example. It was a great stock, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, and you and I actually suffered through Fossil, and we don't like to think about that.
We're getting a question, and I don't have an answer for it. Is this a Giga company a China-based company? Does anybody know for certain?
I know that
So Ken, I was just looking at the Yahoo Finance page. They have their listed headquarters or listed addresses in California, but the profile says its marketplace connects manufacturers primarily in Asia with resellers in the United States, Asia, and Europe. Formerly known as Oriental Standard Human Resources Holdings Limited.
Okay, and Len Douglas, who does a lot of posting on Giga on the Manifest forum, Len is answering just a simple yes. So it has a lot of ties to China, even if technically it might have its main office in the United States. But it has a lot of ties to China, at least according to Len. So if China bothers you, that's another thing to add to your research. Make sure you understand it.
And that explains some of the shipping advantage too. This is the same thing that has powered Temu, which of course advertises it all over the place. But China has a treaty negotiated postal rate that dates back many decades, certainly before its boom. And so originating your mail from China gets you a lot lower rate, and it would be a political negotiation to change that.
Okay, thanks, guys. Quick reminder that we do archive all of these sessions, be they bull sessions or roundtables or some of our educational offerings. You can just go to youtube.com, search for Manifest Investing. If you want to look for roundtables, enter roundtable on top of that. You will find this here. Again, when you do that, we will let you know. If you subscribe, we'll let you know anytime that new content is offered. Here's our quick reminder to look at the consultants. I think based on what I heard over adult beverages in the lounge, we want to look at this carefully, Ken.
Got it.
People that work in that. And then we'll leave it with one more Irish moment. Couple quick things. The one on the right is how do you make an Irishman cry? I mean, that's going to make any Irishman cry on the right.
I like the first one, Mark.
That's a Sam Stovall joke if I ever heard one.
I know. I asked him about that. He said he's a walking Rolodex of dad jokes.
We're getting clarification from our audience, as we always do, and I've had a number of different people now indicate that that the Giga company was based in China, and now it is headquartered in the U.S., but seems to still have most of its ties to China that it had prior.
So caveat emptor.
Yep.
Under those conditions, and that's always true.
And we should be shouting non-core, 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 right? Okay.
All right. So with that, anything else in the hopper, Ken?
No, except to invite people to the roundtable next Tuesday evening. If you need to register and you can't find a way to do it, drop me an email, and I'll not only register you, but I'll show you a way that you can register yourself in the future then. And our next roundtable in June will be on the traditional last Tuesday of the month. It'll be June 25th, if you're trying to keep track of them on your calendar.
So with that, we will send everybody out to a wonderful, and please make it very safe, Memorial Day weekend. And we will be back on the day after Memorial Day with our roundtable warm-up and our Echo roundtable that evening. So with that,
For
I
the
will
first
send,
time in 5 or 6 years, Mark, it looks like we're actually going to have a summer-like Memorial Day. You know, Memorial Day is supposed to be the traditional start of summer, and in Michigan, at least for the last 5 or 6 years, it's acted like it was the start of spring. But this year, it's supposed to be warm for the first time in 6 years. So we'll see.
all right. And Kevin, feel free to stop by on your way back.
Absolutely.
I'm flying.
Oh, well, you can
In that
drop.
case,
You can drop in.
in that case, stay in the plane, okay, Kevin?
Yeah, do
I
not
plan
try to
to.
leave. Do not try to leave that plane once you're on board.
Good night, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.